Everyone, welcome. This is the GTM AI podcast, episode number 22, where we deep dive into AI and Revops with the CEO of Structured Labs, Amrutha Gujar. This is sponsored by the GTM AI Academy, your go-to source for learning how to use AI in companies, teams, and in your individual workflow. Business impact over learning tools.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I am Coach K. Welcome yet again to another episode of the GTM AI podcast. I am here with one of the co-founders and the CEO of StructuredLabs.io, Amrutha Gujar. So excited to have you. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you, John.
For those of you actually watching the video, when she first came on, she has a similar office space as the CEO of Persona, who we just had on a few weeks ago. And she actually knows her, which is way cool. I was like, hey, do you know the Persona team? She's, yeah, I know her. And so anyways, I thought it was really fun that you know each other and like work-ish close together, which is fun. That's cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's always great to have a lot of people from the YC community in the same office building here.
Yeah, I love it. So I always love to start out with, I obviously learned over your LinkedIn, you've been crazy enough that you're an intern software engineer at Microsoft, at Meta, at Google, and then you became a software engineer leader at Meta, and then you went on your own little trail going to Structured. So I would love to know, because that's obviously what I can see from your LinkedIn. Tell me more about your journey and what kind of led you to the AI space and why you shifted gears from working with one of the biggest companies in the world, starting your own. Tell me the story.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've always been a bit of a founder at heart. Even when I was very young, I was always very passionate about building my own software projects and tools. Then I think when the mobile wave was happening, I was very involved with building iPhone applications, but it seemed like there was a big platform shift happening, and I was probably just young enough to have missed it. And when the AI wave was taking off, I think I was like ready to jump in and be a part of what feels like a once in a generation technology shift. And I think being part of this like community in San Francisco, building for people, trying to apply this technology to solve problems for others, like that's really why I'm here.
I love it. So of all the tools, your Structured Labs focuses more on, this is on your website, Structured improves revenue operations by optimizing margins and identifying high-value customers, boosting overall efficiency and profitability with AI-driven insights. So I've interviewed a lot of people and not a lot, I've done a lot with Revops. So I'm curious, why Revops? Why focus there?
Yeah, one off, like I think at Structured, we're really passionate about building for customers that we really care about. And one thing that really stuck out to us about revenue operations was how like active and vibrant the community was and how passionate people are like on LinkedIn and with the customer discovery calls we've done about finding the right processes, building the right infrastructure to compute these sorts of metrics and find opportunities for growth. So people really like moved by the community. And I think it seemed like a lot of the tools that people were using were general purpose tools. And we felt there was like a big opportunity to build better templates, better ETL solutions, better warehousing, all bundled together in the Revops packaging that was very purpose-built for this audience.
I love it. So for those I'm in enablement. So I call them my double-headed dragon partners in Revops. I know them pretty well, but for those who are not Revops and or at least who either work with them or leaders of Revops, tell me about what's the main pain you guys are trying to solve with your tool? Like what is it the Revops people are going through that you're like, we can fix that? What's the challenge?
There are a couple key things that we addressed. One is like fragmented data sources. Typically, when you're revenue operations, you work very cross-functionally across sales and marketing and customer success and sometimes product and finance. And each of these like vertical like teams will have their own point solutions. And so bringing all of this data together into a unified view is like a really big challenge. So we wanted to make this a lot easier. And so Structured serves as a single pane of glass into all of these different functions. The second thing we wanted to address was helping make Revops more strategic and reducing the amount of like data request times and ad hoc requests that data like Revops gets. So we do this by building like better business intelligence tools that are more self-serve than like things like existing solutions in the market. By building better templates that are like RevOps specific for BI, like we can really shorten those like ad hoc requests and enable RevOps to focus more on the growth opportunities for the business.
So when you have a tool like Looker or some of these other kind of dump all platforms, that kind of thing, what's the main difference then between like just a regular BI tool like Looker or something like that, or a Google Studio or whatever, and then with yours?
Yeah, for sure. So we wanted to build this tool in a very AI native way. So what that means is we have like automation that exists at every layer of the user experience. So when you combine data, you no longer have to do this manual like data association and column mapping. We build like a flexible like object model that uses AI to infer like how different columns from different tables are related to one another. Also, our like business intelligence UI, like our analytics UI, reporting UI, it's all generative. For example, if you generate like a sales conversion chart, we can anticipate what the next like drill down might be, what like the slice and dice you might want to do would be based on the context of like that like thread. And so you can get to the answer you need with like way less manual work trying to configure the data in a particular way to get the answer that you need. And that's really because,
So are you using your own model? You're plugging into OpenAI and then pointing at the data, or like how does the back end work? What AI is powering you?
yeah, we currently use OpenAI to power our product, but the direction that we're heading, we would really like to like fine tune these like large foundational models
Right.
and eventually build our own.
Yeah. And just like I have no issue with anybody using OpenAI. It's a massive monster. Might as well plug into it. I would if I had a tech. So I think it's awesome. One thing though I think is unique is what people are able to do with OpenAI, because it's just like this massive trillions of parameters and data just sitting there and you get to point it at a specific direction. So when you, again, I'm gonna ask you some questions that I don't know if hopefully this all makes sense because I'm not the techie brain. I'm just curious. I'm a very curious person. When you have OpenAI in your product and you plug it in and then you point it out, say a company has Salesforce and whatever other data points they have, what your tool does is dumps it all into your tool. Then OpenAI, the power of AI, points at it. Obviously, it's protected, so nothing's being trained and sent back to OpenAI. It's just used for the power. And then from there, you're able to do all the cool stuff you're able to do with OpenAI. Have you plugged into the new 4.40 version yet?
Yeah, absolutely. We implemented like 4.0 the first day that it came out.
It
So
starts.
a lot of, well, we do chart generation using Apache eCharts.
Yeah,
Every single one of the charts that's generated using structured uses the 4.0 model.
I love it. So I told you before the show that we are all about business impact over just learning tools, because tools one thing, but actually making impact. So when I say impact, one of the 4 or 5 big things, which is obviously adding revenue, lowering costs, lowering risk, adding profits, or making better customers or more loyal customers, I should say. Of those
Mhm.
5, do you have, and you don't have to name any names, but do you have any specific examples with companies you like the business impact they're experiencing with the tool as an example?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one that we're really focused on is this like customer satisfaction and like customer experience. So I'll explain what I mean by that. So typically, like when companies can segment their user base really well and understand who's using the product the most, who's having the most positive interactions with like the customer success team, who's moving through the sales pipeline the fastest and really resonating with like the sales materials. When you can understand and synthesize that data, you can double down and focus your business on fewer customer segments that are more focused and more bought in on your product. And in the long run, this like decreases churn and it also increases the value that you're able to provide customers because you're more focused as a business on like their needs. So what we really like help, for example, like what we help with is if you can connect all of this data, we're able to rank different accounts and come up with customer health scores and like cluster all of the accounts in your CRM so that you can quickly identify like the attributes of other businesses that are similar to the ones that you already have that are doing really well. And what we found is that over time, this can decrease the amount of like sales and marketing effort that goes towards accounts that are not going to be as successful in the long run, and it decreases like the sales cycle and overall like helps you grow in a more capital efficient way.
Yeah, I think too many times I've realized over the years that like from sales to marketing to training of sales to RevOps to you name it, customer success, even like really truly understanding your ICP and personas and knowing who's actually buying the product and who's successful with the product is so vitally important, but yet not very many people really understand who that is. And part of it's because of like the problem you're talking about, where you have to have some tool or Excel genius to be able to go through this massive amount of data to really explore and understand the correlations between different things and put the dots together, because it's all there. It's just if someone can actually find the patterns to say, hey, wait a second, this person who we say we're trading everybody on is our main person. They're not actually the main person. This is our main person. So we got to shift our talk track because we're talking to the wrong person, right? Have you seen that happen? Like when you work the company, do you see that kind of thing happen a lot where they redirect as a result of some of the stuff they find out?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the root of the problem is that all of this information is there, as you said, but there are
Yeah.
different people that have different perspectives on who the high value accounts might be, and they might have limited information. So if you are like, let's say a sales team, you might really like a certain like type of account, but you might find that, oh, those customers are way more likely to churn because the product is not quite solving it for them. And as a salesperson, you might be disconnected from like the product usage data and
Yeah.
like the customer success interactions. And so you can keep on going thinking, hey, I'm hitting my goal, I'm hitting my metric. But when each like vertical has like different things that they're optimizing for, and those things are
Yeah.
not compatible with one another, you can like pat yourself on the back in the short term and feel like you're doing well, but then
Mhm.
realize in the long term that you've expended a lot of resources towards the wrong things, or you don't have your teams working together cohesively. I think the best like tools, like they like surface the information that helps like businesses and like leaders make the right decisions from the get-go and be able to like spot check this and get the teams to work together more effectively.
The last company I was with, when I was talking to my sales team, I told them like, what is, I should say, how do you measure the value of a decision? How do you measure that?
Yeah.
Because as an example to what you're saying, like in the past, it would have taken weeks of analysis and observation for you to uncover a certain thing. And those weeks lost is obviously lost time on strategy and other things. But then even then, the data might be inaccurate, so you can't make the best decisions you could. So the time and the quality of decisions you make is essentially what makes or break a business. So the question is, what's that worth? And the answer is everything you have, because otherwise you don't make good decisions and everything goes downhill. So curious then, in the example you gave around sales and CS, like the classic example is sales goes to the economic buyer, at least the champion of some kind. And then CS doesn't always work with them. They work with the users or the manager of the users. You don't have the same person. Curious, again, there's a random question. What do you find in the CS data that you would say helps the salespeople, even though the personas they're talking to are not the same people?
That's a great question. So typically, like for sale to be successful, you have to sell all the rooms of the house. You have to be able to articulate the value prop to the champion, to the decision maker. But at the end of the day, the people who are like on the ground, like using the tool, have to like it and have to find success using it. And so I think that typically, like being able to put this data together, it also helps create a better narrative for like when you're selling into an organization, like you can explain more like concretely, hey, this is how the end user would use it. Like you can articulate that to all of the people on this buying committee more effectively because the salespeople have visibility into that information from the get-go as well.
Yeah, I think too, it's also understanding a churn perspective. Obviously, you don't have to work as hard on the sales side because you're losing all the stuff on the back end. You don't have to do as much on the front end, at least to grow as much as you'd like to. But that happens all the time to where CS doesn't have the data they need to understand who's at risk of churning or not until it's way too late and not because of them doing anything wrong as a CS experience, but because of people not logging in or problems on the back end or all that kind of stuff that users have that then eventually make them not want to work with the team anymore. So I think what you're saying is correct. It's just, it's helping the team know why that's important, you know?
There's a lot of tools out there that do lead nurturing in like the pre-sales world. We really believe that the future of business and being successful with business is going to be nurturing customers even post-sale, like getting them really activated if there's drop-offs in product usage, like being able to like proactively be alerted on those kinds of risks and make changes and like actually adapt the product on the fly to make it more useful for customers even post-sale. That's how you like build continued value for people, and having that data as a key driver of that.
Yeah. So what do you get most jazzed about? I know this is a really strange question because you're a software engineer of Meta, and now you're here doing your own thing, but what's the thing that you just get like super excited about? This is why I love this. What is that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's two things. I think the technology, first, the technology is very cool. Oftentimes, I think every generation, every time there's a new foundational technology like mobile or AI or anything that comes up, you can solve the same problems people have always had, but rethink about them and from first principles rather than from what the last decade of that tool looked like. And so I think that with AI, we can go back to the basics and really think about what is the job to be done? How can we like leverage this new technology and like to see it work, I think is very cool as an engineer, like being able to hack that, being able to see the results, being able to see how much easier it is to onboard. The like user experience of it and the technology of it is something that I'm like very involved in from the product side and something I'm very, very proud of for our team. I think the second thing is like seeing people have success with it. At the end of the day, we spend all of our day talking to people who want to like get like customers that are happy, and I think we're also like in the same boat. That's why we also dog food our own product. But I think getting people to use our tool, be able to grow their businesses, be able to better understand how they're allocating resources and watching them find success with that, that's really the stuff that keeps us going.
So random question. I have a couple of software engineer friends, so I know what you're talking about, but I'd love to have you just for a second, because this has to do with what I talk about in enablement and AI training. You talked about first principle thinking. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I think like first principle thinking is something that a lot of really great CEOs and founders talk about. And it's like being able to reason about things from the really basic laws of physics effectively.
Yeah.
I think like sometimes like when you think about first principles thinking, those phrases feel so obvious that they almost might be trite, but then like reasoning about what is correct based on that is like really what enables you to build something that doesn't bring in assumptions that are not necessarily true anymore. Like businesses want to become more profitable and make more money is like a first principle to me and to like anyone. So we're building based off of some of those like really key truths about like how these businesses operate, and the way we solve the problem is to always stay rooted in that like outcome that we're driving for the customers we work with.
I had a Revops friend of mine actually tell me that he's like, process before tools is what he always said. Process before tools, which I always loved that. But then I thought to myself, wait a second, that you could argue the other way, because not that the process would be eliminated, but you'll have different capabilities because the AI technology gives you capabilities of doing different things. So the question is not that the process would change, but more of our involvement would change, I guess you could say. I'm curious of, because you are enabling a RevOps functionality, you talk about process, like where's the balance between saying the first principle of saying, okay, this process was built based on an old framework that no longer exists. And when do you need to go back and say, we got to figure out a new process? Like, where's that balance? And you say, we're doing this because it's a tool giving us new capabilities that we could have done before. How do you balance process for tools? And then you say, wait a second, we can now do something new. How do you suggest doing that?
A great question. So I think that the right tools enable you to figure out what the right process is.
Yeah.
And I can give an analogy that's like a software
Sure.
analogy. So software engineers are not editing code files and emailing it back to each other because GitHub exists. And so there's like a version control tool, and there's like a process, a workflow that tool like enforces effectively on a team. And the tool like creates like a shared framework for reasoning about like how a team collaborates on writing code. Like it surfaces merge conflicts. It lets you roll back to a previous time in history. It lets you be more rigorous in how you like figure out what the source of truth is across the entire software engineering team. And because GitHub as a tool is adopted in organizations, there's an entire process that kind of springs up around the tool. And the tool creates these like assumptions that are true across the board. And it lets you build process that feels more lightweight because the tool takes care of 70% of the heavy lifting.
That's right. Yep.
And so we really think that structured is going to play that same role for RevOps teams. So having the right tool, it's not really about the tool necessarily, but having the tool helps you better reason about what the other functions are doing, how they're thinking about things. And it makes the process part is still very important, but it makes that interaction model a lot more lightweight and a lot more productive.
So now this is a great transition then into AI tools, into just the go-to-market space in general. Do you see that happening more and more? And if so, what process do you think is, quote unquote, holy, that will be disrupted because of tools taking over the process? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that there's a really big opportunity with AI in the go-to-market space specifically. Like, I think what it enables people to do is spend less time on like manual parts of the preparation work, like data preparation work. And it enables people to like rather start from the output of that data preparation work and reason about like decisions that need to be made that help with growth. And so I think that the biggest thing that AI does is it enables like people to function in smaller teams that like do more. And what that means is I think that there are going to be like a lot of like smaller companies that are a lot more profitable, and there are going to be way more companies. We went through Y Combinator, and I think this is a common YC philosophy where they believe the amount of value you can create for humankind is pretty unbounded. And right now, the bottleneck for getting to that future is the fact that it takes such a large army of people to reason about this data, to put the whole operation together. But I see a future where there are like thousands upon thousands of really small, really powerful, like highly value creative teams that are like leveraging these AI tools to like do more with less. And the surface area of problems that we can solve as a society is going to become a lot larger. And I think that tools like ours are like part of that equation, part of that future.
So then in that scenario, which I definitely agree with you, just what I'm hearing though is that the process wouldn't change. The tools would just take over part of the process, is essentially what you're saying. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is what fundamentally makes like AI and like agentic workflows like different from like the SaaS tools. Another common thing I've been hearing a lot is the last generation was like software as a service. Now it's service as a software. Like people's expectations of this technology are changing like every day. Like it's more about like doing the job to be done end to end and not just like doing one piece of the job like with software. So even the way we're thinking about building structured, where we're not just BI, we're not just like ETL, we're not just like the like Slack connection, like we're the entire like job to be done end to end. And I think that more and more businesses that are being built with AI are going to own the entire workflow rather than owning one piece of it with a SaaS tool.
So the one thing is, again, you're like teeing me up for these perfect transitions, which is very nice of you. But what's coming next? I know in the AI space, saying 6 months or a year is like a lifetime because of what's happened the last 6 months. But in the next 6 months for you, in general, what are you excited for when it comes to AI tech coming down?
Yeah, I think the thing I'm really excited about is multimodal models. So I think like already like seeing some of these demos of like voice agents, seeing some of the video and image generation, these are extremely powerful because I think, again, it just changes the way that we interact with technology. Because even if I think every SaaS tool that came out in the last 10 years could effectively be like a human like virtual agent effectively. And if instead of having a like SaaS tool that does like customer ticket resolution for you, if you have like a virtual avatar that can talk to you naturally, that can interact as if they're an additional teammate, like those kinds of like baseline improvements that are happening are going to create like an entire new surface area for user experiences that are just very novel and very powerful. And so I think, again, it enables us to rethink what is a SaaS tool? Do we really want to interact with things by clicking buttons on a dashboard, or do we want to have more immersive like user experiences. And so I think that's the future we're heading towards, and I'm very excited about that.
What I keep thinking about a lot is just the whole Iron Man Jarvis thing. Like just how revolutionary that concept is. But like you watch Tony Stark, when he's talking to Jarvis, he doesn't use a keyboard and clicking. He's just talking and he's moving his hands and doing the thing. Like I see very quickly, especially with the new 4.0 OpenAI stuff with the voice agents, like the only thing missing is it's connected to our computer somehow. Like can read all of our files and do stuff for us. Like that's like where we're going. The next step is okay, now plug this into your MacBook and it has access to all your calendars, all your emails, and say, hey, delete these things for me, blah, blah, blah. And it's like that world is like fun and exciting. It's also pretty crazy thinking about all the things you could be able to do. And I think about people talk about jobs. This is my last question. Actually, no, two last questions. People talk about jobs getting replaced. And I keep thinking to myself with Tony Stark and AI didn't replace him. AI couldn't have done anything that Tony Stark did because it was Tony Stark's brain that created all this stuff, but he couldn't have done what he did without AI. Like he made the original Iron Man suit, but he could have taken it to the next level without an AI to assist him in the design, all this stuff. And I see it the same way with us, with AI, is that it's just going to be augmenting what we can do and make us be better. So we're thinking on a whole other level that we don't have to think about all the menial stuff anymore because we're thinking more creatively, thinking higher. So for you, when it comes to AI, what practices do you do to push yourself in the way that you can work differently because you have AI helping you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, as you said too, I think there's like a human nature to always push to higher levels of abstraction as like the things that are at the lower levels of abstraction become more and more automated. And I think that again, the upper bound of like how people can think about problems and the types of things they want to accomplish, the upper bound is very unbounded. And I think like in any case, even if that bound exists, we're very far from it. And maybe the surface area of problems that we start solving just becomes broader. Like maybe we don't have enough time to think about mining asteroids or like building in space, and maybe getting more and more of like these like things that are like necessary run the business roles to be like more and more automated. It just increases the scope of what we can do. And I think the way that I think about this, even for myself, is always, especially as a founder, you always have to think about what is the highest leverage thing I can be doing today, like this minute, this hour, this day, like what is the thing that's going to move the needle? And there are always going to be things you have to do that are like run the business tasks that are not needle movers. And I think more and more like people's days are going to be focused just on the high impact things for like 100% of the day. And that's a future that's going to be a lot more productive and exciting.
Yeah. Thinking about that's what I get excited about, because I know there's a lot of things I do now. I'm like, this is not the most productive thing, but there's no one else to do it except for me. So totally get it. All right. So before we go, last question, which is totally random. When you have the ability to have AI do something for you, whatever it might be, personal, business, or otherwise, what would it be?
Sorry, like you mean when would I like want it, or
more of what? Like what task would you want to have replace you? I don't want to do this anymore. Let AI take care of that. What would you say?
I've always wanted to have like a personal assistant for all of the chores and errands that are non-work related. Like I would love to have an AI do my laundry and order my like groceries. And again, I use a lot of SaaS tools for this stuff. I order like groceries on Amazon Fresh, but to have an AI like anticipate what I would want and be able to like even automate clicking that button and like managing resources of I don't know how many like apples I bought this week or something. I think that would be very cool.
I love it. I was telling somebody the other day, I asked the same question too a couple of times ago about I'd want the AI to pick out my next food from different countries, just because I love food and I don't know what's out there. So I'd give it like my tastes and preferences and allergies and that kind of stuff and say, okay, now go to Uzbekistan or now go to Australia or go to Japan, like wherever, just let's make me a meal and then be able to eat different all the time would be a blast, I think. But
for sure. I also have a dream of having an AI smart home. Like I want the blinds to open at the time of my first like meeting. I don't know. I'd love to.
Like on Jarvis, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Good morning. Oh, that's awesome. For people to find you, you're at structuredlabs.io.
Yes.
And are you people okay to reach out to you via LinkedIn? Shall I leave your thing there? Or what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I am on all the social media. Like I'm very responsive on LinkedIn, email, Twitter. Yeah, like I can drop all of those in the comments.
Love it. Hopefully by the time we have this, I'll have a demo from you. So in the GTM AI tools demo library, you can go and see a demo of the tool, which I'm really excited to see. And just want to say to you, thank you so much. You've been nothing but very nice, obviously very intelligent, and I just really appreciate you taking the time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Jonathan. This is a great conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon, all.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.